them some grace, like okay.
The challenge I'm going to have is that I shared my link with a few of my colleagues, and so they'll be coming in with my name.
It's okay. It's okay.
But we have to like get them up to.
When they join, you demote them. They can demote them from their hand over there. So they won't join as a panelist, but as a member, as an attendee. Yeah.
Sorry, have you sent it?
Yeah, so it's like you started recording already.
Yes, I've started. You can go on.
Oh, okay. Since everyone is here, let's start. So you're all welcome to this session. I am Kabiru Babatunde Amusa, a second-year PhD student in African history at the University of Miami. So I'll be chairing this session, and we hope this panel is rich in terms of discussion that has to do with indigenous knowledge, religion, culture, socio-economic and politics that affects Nigeria's environment and rural development. So in this session, we'll be discussing themes that has to do with conservation, traditional urban medicine, livelihood, nature, and heritage. We have three concurrent sessions. We will be having three concurrent sessions, and this is just the first session that we'll be having this morning. And so we have scholars that will be enlightening us on colonialism and colonial policies and how they altered human and non-human history. So I have on my list here four presenters. The first is Adetula Bolanle. Adetula Bolanle will be presenting on reclaiming ecological sustainability through decolonization. Adetula is a postdoctoral student in the Department of Philosophy at the University of Ibadan. She's interested in Africa and African studies, epistemology, and bioethics. I don't know if she's online. And oh, you are there in Lagos?
Yes.
Oh, all right. Thank you. It's nice to see you there. We have Ukagbe. Am I right? Ukagbe Nkechi.
No, that's Ukebu.
What do you pronounce? How do you pronounce it?
Ukebu.
Okay, Ukebu. Thank you. Ukebu Nkechi Mbadibochimma will be presenting on exploring ecological conservation through the lens of people faunal totems and chiefship titles. She's a linguistic lecturer in the Department of Linguistics, Igbo and Nigerian Languages at the University of Nigeria, Nsukka. Her research interests is in phonetics, phonology, and the documentation of Igbo language, culture, politics, and ecology. Also, we have on our panel, Eke Anya Uchimma. She will be presenting on traditional medicine in post-colonial southeastern Nigeria. Chimma is a PhD student in the Department of History at the University of Florida International University. Her research interest is in medicine, family, and cultural history. Also in our panel today, we'll have Dr. Felix Adiola and Professor Tunde Oduwobi, who will both be presenting on colonial modernity, local agency, and the rise of agrarian town in Yoruba land, Ipaye Balogun and Ajebamidele between 1890 and 1960s. Adjola holds a PhD in African economic and socio-cultural history. His research interests intersect environmental and developmental studies. While Tunde Oduwobi is the head of the Department of History and Strategic Studies in the University of Lagos, and his research interest focuses on pre-colonial and colonial African history. We have enough time to discuss robustly on this topic, and so we'll be giving each speaker 15 minutes for discussion, and then we can have enough time for question and answer. So, Bolanle, are you ready for us?
Yes.
All right. You have 15 minutes. Thank you.
Can I present from here?
Yeah, maybe you should move forward a bit. Can move a bit to this side.
So good morning once again, everyone. My name is Bolanle Adesula, and I'll be presenting on indigenous knowledge, reclaiming ecological sustainability through decolonization. So to set the context of my presentation is to inform us that global climate crisis has intensified the need for sustainable solutions. So we are not just looking out for solutions, but one that is sustainable. A solution that addresses today's need and will not create problems in the future. And mainstream solutions often ignore indigenous knowledge systems. So this paper aims to help us escape the trap of using Western Panadol for a global health issue. So it's a global issue, and we should not limit ourselves to only the Western methodology to solve this global issue, because we are part of the global village. And so the big question is, one big question that comes readily to our mind is, what is Africa's contribution to climate change? So here's a data from 2024 that shows the contribution of each country or groups of countries to climate change that's been emphasized. And we can see from this that Nigeria, okay, I was supposed to, let me say something there. Africa as a continent contributes only less than 2% to global warming and changes. And from this data, we can see that the entirety of the least developed countries only contribute 6.2. Similarly, I did a quick comparison to 10 years backward, 2014. Africa still remains 2 to 3% as of 2014, and gradually we are currently on 2%. So this actually spurs a line of thought to say we are not the, even though we contribute little, we are not the main contributor to this problem on ground. However, we are the most vulnerable to the effect of this to this problem. And so this presentation explores how traditional African ecological values can inform sustainable practice and help us overcome this issue. And those are conceptual clarifications for us to understand what I really mean by whose harms. So the theoretical frameworks are applied in this research are social epistemology, that is, knowledge is socially situated. This is to call our minds in fact that even the Western approach we are taking, we should always remember that it stems from somewhere, from a social construct. And then we are looking at African eco-philosophy. It's a new rising field. However, it focuses on the interconnectedness of beings, nature, and spirit in African cosmology. And then I'm using the mirror image approach that says that literature reflects the society and ideologies embedded in society. So when we read things written out by people, we should always have, like, we should have that back of our mind that it is a reflection of the society the writer finds himself in, or the society the writer is discussing about. So this particular slide here, the discourse is like a summary of what this research addresses. So again, the backdrop of global climate and the explanation that I've made earlier. So this paper engages an appraiser on the relevance of indigenous knowledge. These are these two entry points. So the first thing is it interrogates the idea of mutual respect, agency, entity, and being accorded to forests and ecosystems. So this is to push forward the first argument that the idea of ecosystem, forestry, or non-human entities in the Yoruba thought system is built on mutual respect, agency, entity, and being. Second, this paper sees the opportunity to also explore the big difference between traditional ecological knowledge and the Western ecological knowledge. So the correct example of how of this mutual respect, agency, and entity and being comes from the key reference notes are Igboa with Aiwo. So in Yoruba land, there are forests, there are conservative area where people are prevented from entering. In fact, you do not see animals or living things in that forest. Similarly, we have the tree liturgies. So for Yoruba herbalists, they will not just go and cut in. There are so there are liturgies like eulogy that have been said. Similarly, we have folk tales, proverbs, folklore that makes illustration using Igi Iroko, using several trees as key examples. Also, so some school of thought will say all of these things they are just stories. Can we validate them like the Western world? And that's why within the copy of this, please the next slide. So that's why within the copy of this paper, I have also interrogated this argument from the lens of is this
No. Control.
Okay. So I've interrogated is through the lens of old river verses, especially HOG. So
Next step. So you.
okay, so this is an idiographic from one day Abibola's work to say old river is not just something that someone 1,500 years just wrote down. This is our own indigenous but most validated source of knowledge and so that's why I've used an illustration to show how Yorubas value environmental ethics and care for the environment. So this is in summary, this is a story about Riri who has 3 children, and one is the first one is Olo, the way. The second one is Oja, market, and the last child was the house. So she was pressed and she went to the first one to is it to them? Okay, so yes. So to them, and the son told her that this is the way people pass, and so she cannot eat herself along that path. The next son also said, no, this is the next slide. So the next one also said, no, where will you defecate? The pepper seller's tray is here. The local beans tray is here. The salt tray is here. So you have to go home. You have to go to the where you will find a free freedom to express yourself to defecate. So, and at the end, she went to Ile and she was able to do that.
Yeah,
What that literally explains is Jera.
Bolanle, please, you have 2 minutes more.
Okay, so and the last one, sorry, the next slide. So to the second goal of my paper, traditional, no, the next slide, the next one. Yes, so traditional is to push forward the basic difference between Western model or idea of ecosystem and the traditional idea of ecosystem. The goal of this slide is to call our attention to the fact that our perspectives are different, and we cannot directly pick up their recommendations to adopt into ours. So the Western model is human-centered, it's exploitative and commodifying, but the tradition and its controls, it has to do with human control. However, in the traditional model, humans are not seen as so superior to the forest or to the other non-human or living entity. They are also accorded respect. So in conclusion, this paper reemphasizes that integrating metaphysical perspective from Yoruba ecological thought with available information is capable of offering transformative framework for sustainability and environmental ethics. So thank you.
Yeah, thank you for that presentation. Please, you can note down your questions for each presenter. So the next presenter is exploring ecological conservation through the lens of Igbo fauna totems and chiefship title by Chima. Chima, are you ready? Unmute yourself, please.
Yes, I'm ready. I'm trying
All
to
right.
share my slide, so I'm requesting okay, permission. All right.
All right, you are permitted. I think you have access to it.
Yeah, I hope you guys can see.
Yes,
my
we can
slide
see.
now. Okay.
15 minutes, please.
Okay. I'll try to see how to do that. All right. Good morning, everyone. I'm delighted to actually share briefly from an ongoing study that sits at a fascinating intersection of language, culture, and environmental conservation. I am Nkechi Ukebu, and I'm working on this study with my colleague, Samuel Akimbo. I know he's somewhere around the virtual audience. Our presentation is titled Documenting Igbo Language and Promoting Biodiversity Through Indigenous Ecological Knowledge. We hope to share some of our insights into this profound connection between linguistic and biological diversity, particularly within the Igbo context. So out of the over 7,000 languages being used in Africa, we have about 41% of them 7,000 languages being used in the world. We have about 71% of them in Africa, with Nigeria housing a little over 17% of them. And I'm sure that this is no news to most of us that are involved in African languages. Murphy's study in 2001 and 2005, as well as others, have observed that biological, linguistic, and cultural diversity tend to co-occur. And African countries are among the top countries with biodiversity, with Nigeria occupying the top 15%. Now, there are studies like Murphy, Harrison, and others that believe that the loss in biodiversity actually matches the decline of linguistic and cultural diversity. However, language endangerment surpasses the loss of all these other organisms that have been mentioned. And this is rather sad because the loss of language signifies the loss of very unique ecological knowledge, worldviews, and cultural practices that are vital for indigenous communities. So we also see that other studies that suggest this suggest also that the factors that actually contribute to language endangerment also contribute to the loss of biodiversities. Now, going forward, and we quickly see that since language is a repository of indigenous knowledge system, research has proven that indigenous knowledge systems are very important to conversations about the environment. We also note that despite this established link between language and biodiversity, Indigenous approaches are often excluded from language documentation and revitalization efforts due to the heavy use of metaphors in languages. But recent studies have proven that indigenizing STEM, that is science, technology, engineering, and mathematics, show the resourcefulness of indigenous languages in conservation efforts. Now, from the language ecology perspective, language is not just a rule of governed system, but it's also a pattern behavior that arises as a result of human socialization, communication, culture, and community. I think that can be seen in the work of Ghana, 2005. So our contribution to both language documentation and ecological conservation has this core objectives. First, we're undertaking an audiovisual documentation of linguistic and cultural practices associated with plants and animals, all in the native language of the communities we're working with, but in this sense, Igbo. Secondly, we are meticulously going to annotate and transcribe this linguistic data using multimodal software, which allows for a rich analysis. Our third aim will be to explore the profound insights that these practices can offer for sustainable coexistence of humans and the natural world. And empirically, our exploration is grounded in the study of Igbo fauna totems and Igbo fauna-based chieftaincy titles, as we'll see soon. So this is just a quick overview of what we'll cover today. It's like a roadmap. We'll start with all of this. I won't bother us with this roadmap so that we can move ahead. Now to the establishing the background to the language we're working on. Igbo is an Igboid Niger-Congo language with over 20 varieties in 5 states of Southeast Nigeria with about 25 million speakers. Now, despite the speaker strength, there has been concerns at some very relevant quarters. Particularly, the UNESCO labels the language as potentially vulnerable because of the observed decline in the daily use of the language and culture. However, there have been some optimism in recent strides that Igbo scholars have taken to promote the use of the language, and this underscores the need for documentation-based research like this one we are doing in the language. Now, the Igbo culture is profoundly shaped by the relationship between humans and their environment, just as was mentioned by the previous panelist in Yoruba. In this case, it is evident in several key aspects. Spirituality, as regards deity and ancestral spirits that are believed to inhabit nature. Rivers, forests, and then specifically animals, which we're interested in, as we see in animals like the leopard, ago, ake, the python, and others. Then totems. These are sacred animals or plants that symbolize identity and lineage. They often act as guardians of ecology through taboos and rituals. Then we have another one, which is chieftaincy titles. These titles bestow social status and responsibility, and they are frequently linked to the preservation or a symbolic connection to animals. Historically, these cultural practices have served as informal conservation systems, playing a crucial role in protecting the environment, its plants and animals. Now, our goal, the expected research outcome is that by adopting the multimodal interdisciplinary approach in documenting ecological-based cultural practices, we're going to create awareness for the ecological benefits of these ancestral belief systems. We want to highlight the wisdom embedded within them. We want to promote language and cultural vitalization. This is because language and culture are intrinsically linked to these conservation practices. And then we want to create valuable research resources that will benefit not just the field of linguistics, but a wider range of research communities as well. Now, a little on how we conducted our research. Our participants were recruited, indigenous Igbo speakers. Successfully, we have recruited 20 participants so far. And then our recruitment criteria was just specific. We only needed individuals with proficient knowledge, not just in the language, but that possess a deep knowledge of the ecological narratives and cultural practices. So it's important here to note that because of the nature of our work, we consider cultural knowledge as a form of education, and it is distinct from formal schooling. So also our participants cover various age groups to ensure a broader perspective. Now the instruments, we ensured that because we needed high quality data, we used a range of instruments. Our data sets are recorded for multifunctional purposes, which allows researchers ranging from phonetics to gesture analysis and even the creation of documentaries to access this kind of data. So we prioritized capturing multimodality of human communication and verbal acts. This means that the video recording of our interviews by specific video cameras were very important, and then condenser microphones. This was to ensure that the audio quality would be ensured. Now, for archival purposes, our audio format is specifically, there's a specific format we have, and though it is heavy in terms of file size, we know that it's necessary to preserve and is excellent for a longer term preservation. So our interview procedure also was quite straightforward. Participants were interviewed in Igbo, covering topics like indigenous spirituality, totems, chieftaincy titles, all in connection to plants and animals. And we also made sure to collect proverbs related to these themes, and also that also often encapsulate deep cultural wisdom. Most of these interviews were, of course, recorded audiovisually and were conducted both at the University of Nigeria and Nsukka and in communities surrounding the university. We chose this location because of its cosmopolitan nature, which allows diverse representation of Igbo speakers from various communities. So following the recording phase, our next step involved meticulous transcription. This is important because most of the this annotation phase is what helps with the archival, and it also helps ensure that transcriptions are time aligned using the software we used in this case was ELAN. So for those unfamiliar with ELAN, ELAN is an open source software specifically designed to and managed by Max Planck Institute for Psycholinguistics, and is a powerful tool that can be used in this kind of research. So this is an illustration of the annotation process. The man was explaining, let me just see if I can play this. I hope you can hear.
Yes.
Okay, this is an illustration. Okay, this one is an illustration of the annotation process. The man was explaining how it is a taboo for a pregnant woman to eat kites because kites are known to steal chicks, and they can do that so suddenly, even in front of the mother hen. So each of these tiers serve a specific purpose, allowing for a comprehensive analysis of the data. We have the transcription tier, which represents speakers and pronunciation based on the IPA symbols. Then we have the orthographic tier that shows the written form of the speech based on the language's orthography. The translation tier is the English equivalent. The participant note tier is for any relevant observation about the participants during their turn-taking conversations. And then the last tier is the metadata, which provides contextual information like that is collected during the data collection phase and about the language consultant. Now, ELAN also allows us to create a large corpora that are invaluable for both linguistic and natural language processing research. So we can easily perform frequency counts for words, for instance, and also the audiovisual components are incredibly rich. They enable us to conduct like detailed acoustic and gestural analysis. Additionally, we can generate subtitles from our translation or the transcription tiers directly in ELAN, which can then be fed into a video editing tool, like as we just use CapCut. And this is very fascinating in creating accessible outputs. We see that there, that those are the subtitles. All right, let me go to the next place, the result. Protection, one of them is protection of totemic animals. Now, in parts of Abia communities close to Cross River, the Ozodimba, that's the chimpanzee, are considered king.
Please, you have 2 minutes left.
Okay, and spiritual messengers that are explicitly not to be hunted. It reflects kinship and ancestral ties. The same thing with the green mamba aka. It symbolizes wisdom, alertness, divine presence, and protection. Now, in some places in Ebonyi and all of that. So beyond this, there are other animals like Ago, Agui, Enyi, and all of that that are protected through traditional practices. Now, the one fascinating thing is that there is a kind of complex situation that happens where animals like agu are protected by taboos from being hunted. Yet we see chieftaincy titles that seemingly valorize their killing, like we have Uwagu, we have Owenyi, and all of that. Now, these instances it raises important questions for us, and it's like we need to consider: is it that such titles are found in all of these subgroups of Igbo, or are they actually localized? And then could these titles be metaphors that don't refer to literal killing of these animals, but rather to conquest or bravery more generally? And finally, are these titles modern innovations within Igbo society, or do they have other historical roots? So these are crucial areas for further investigation as we delve into the nuances of cultural practices. So these are other chieftaincy titles that celebrate individuals who display formidable leadership or achieve things that are seemingly impossible. In fact, these titles often coexist with the others that highlight the same animals and protective qualities, reinforcing their revered status in the environment. So this understanding is crucial for interpreting traditional ecological practices. Now, another preliminary interview shows a kind of concerning trend, the fact that, as you can see, you will see warning. So these were example. That's the place where we got it from in Facebook. The fact that some Igbo people are experiencing a kind of psychological disconnection from totemic and traditional practices, and that these practices that are supposed to protect the environment and wildlife are actually disconnected. And this is shown in different ways, like burning of sacred groves, forests, shrines, and all of this. But this makes it that the once conserved areas that were vulnerable to degradation are now being exposed. So this highlights an urgent need for revitalization efforts. The implications of this work there are very significant implications. First, our output will enable us to comprehensively document linguistic ecological knowledge. As most of our team members are linguists, especially students from the Department of Linguistics, our rich data set will form the basis of our exploration into various issues in Igbo grammar. Crucially, all our recordings will be deposited in an open access archive, making them valuable resource for researchers and even members of the Igbo community, because that's very important in community-based research. Then most importantly, we sincerely hope that media materials and academic papers generated from this data set will actively promote language vitalization and wildlife and or environmental conservation in Igbo regions. Now to the conclusion. We firmly believe that understanding the connectedness, the relationship between language, Igbo language, culture, and fauna, that's animals, is paramount for effective language revitalization, the preservation of cultural heritage, and indeed, ecological conservation. The Igbo worldview truly demonstrates a profound connection. For the Igbo, animals are far more than mere creatures. They are messengers, they are guardians, and they are embodiments of divine power, forming the bedrock of environmental ethics. The documenting this kind of rich ecological knowledge undeniably requires a multimodal and cross-disciplinary approach. And finally, a commitment to our access, open access approach contributes directly to open science principles, making research in the humanities, particularly in linguistics and literary studies, more transparent and replicable. This is where we draw the curtain. Dalu, thank you very much for your time and attention. I hope that this presentation has given you a kind of insight into the vital connections between language, culture, and biodiversity within the Igbo context.
Thank you so much for your presentation. Please, on a lighter note, if we are not presenting, we should please mute our mics. Chima.
Yes, please.
All right, you have 15 minutes, please.
All right, thank you very much. My name is Chima Ikanyawo. and I will be speaking to the topic traditional medicine, sustainability, and indigenous knowledge in post-colonial southeastern Nigeria. Yes, there are two topics on the screen. One is the one documented in the book. However, after the research or during the course of the research, it was reframed and to sustainability of indigenous knowledge through traditional medicine in post-colonial southeastern Nigeria. Way of introduction, traditional medicine usually is often portrayed disdainfully to the fact that it usually gives a negative outlook, especially in post-colonial sub-Saharan Africa. The major reason for this is the effects of colonialism on sub-Saharan Africa. The effects of Christian missions, Christianity seems to give a seeming suppression on traditional medicine. Traditional medicine being the subtotal of beliefs, practices, skills that are used in prevention, management, and cure of mental illness and even physical illness. To the traditional Igbo person, the life and the health of a person harmonizes both physical and psycho-spiritual practices as well to make for a whole being. So I will be interchangeably using southeastern Nigeria and Igbo land because southeastern Nigeria is home to the people of the Igbo tribe. Now, there are key aspects of traditional medicine in southeastern Nigeria, that is the Igbo land. Firstly, there is a holistic approach whereby traditional medicine not only is a tool for achieving wellness and well-being in a society and of a people, traditional medicine is also a useful tool to sustain and preserve indigenous knowledge. This is majorly because traditional medicine relies on experiential knowledge, it relies on observation, and the delivery method is by way of oral delivery. So indigenous knowledge is passed while the practice of traditional medicine is also passed. There's a spiritual dimension to traditional medicine in Igbo land. The deities and the rituals, the prayers, the divination that goes on around traditional medicine are ways whereby indigenous knowledge are being preserved. By traditional medicine here, I mean the subtotal of the activities that make for well-being. For example, we have things like bone setting, which in Igbo language is called Igbo Okpukpu. And then we have herbalism, which is Mborogu, Ogu Mborogu, you know. And then we have the medical dental, the traditional dentists, and we have the traditional birth attendants. And of course, we have the mothers who provide the Omubo services to new mothers. And then we have the traditional birth attendants too, who are Ndi Nchenwa or Ndi Omunwa and all that. Now, in Igbo land, southeastern Nigeria, medicine is known as Ogu, and it includes physical substances like herbs, and also it involves spiritual component. And they are specifically chosen because of their relevance to the specific ailment or purpose, because some illnesses are physically induced, while in Igbo land, it is believed that some illnesses are also spiritually induced. So there are condition-specific measures that attend to specific ailments. All the activities that surround traditional medicine in a bid to provide a healthier environment are useful tools where the indigenous knowledge and practices are sustained. For example, the ethical principles of traditional medicine in Igbo land is the Ofonogu. There is a picture of that on the screen. Ofonogu is a symbol of equity and justice. It provides efficacy to the treatments. It's used to express justice and equity for the ethical practices that surround traditional medicine. And it also provides a patient-healer relationships. I would also want to say that traditional medicine cuts across just the divinations and the rituals around healing. It's also an interaction, and that interaction cuts across the environment, it cuts across human-to-human interaction, and it also cuts across the human-to-nature interaction, where the people that practice herbalism, which are the Dibia and Morogo people, they use herbs and herbal extracts and herbal concoctions as ogo medicine towards healing. To the statement of the problem, post-colonial southeastern Nigeria has a suppression of indigenous traditional medicine because of the effects of colonialism. Post-colonial southeastern Nigeria is predominantly Christian. So there are elements of African traditional religion, but the ratio is in favor of Christianity. So there is a seeming suppression of indigenous traditional medicine with derogatory expressions to it, like local, like native, like backward, and all that. There is also a negative implication and construct of the profession in terms of the trade, in terms of the practice, and in terms of the prospects, where we have issues like urbanization, modernization, and how the practice is able to adapt in post-colonial era. There's also the problem of Christian missions and Western biomedicine, and also Christian prayers, where there is a clash and conflict of ideas, where people usually, either they are syncretic, they mix all together, or one supersedes the other. For the purpose of this research, there are research questions that surround the research that I conducted. What are some challenges that the practitioners face in post-colonial era? I also asked the questions of the effects of the European colonialism on traditional medicine. And I also went further to ask the efforts that the practitioners are making to sustain traditional medicine, even in the post-colonial era, amidst the challenges. And I have research objectives and significance of the study, but the theoretical framework of this study adopts the indigenous knowledge systems theory because it's based on holisticism and interconnectedness. It's based on oral and experiential transmission, like I said earlier. Traditional medicine is passed, the delivery method is passed orally, and then it is context specific. There's a spiritual aspect, there is a psycho-spiritual aspect, and there is the physical aspect as well. It's also dynamic and adaptive. In post-colonial era, with the changing scenes and dynamics that southeastern Nigeria has seen, traditional medicine has evolved and is adaptive, and that is why the theoretical framework of indigenous knowledge systems theory was adapted for this study. The methodology for this research is a qualitative research design. It's exploratory. The study areas are southeastern states of Imo, Abia, Ebonyi, Anambra, Enugu, and Delta states. The study population that was used for this study are traditional medicine practitioners. Here they will mean traditional birth attendants, bone setters, herbalists, traditional dental healers, the Ndinne that provide omugwo services for new mothers that take care of postpartum issues and depression and the likes. The method of data collection was based on oral interviews. I majorly interviewed the traditional medicine practitioners, a lot of them, for the purpose of this study. And ethical considerations were taken into place. I got verbal consent from the practitioners to be able to use their pictures and to post them for study and research purposes only. Then to my findings, I categorized the findings into the challenges and then into the mitigation. For the challenges, like I mentioned earlier, colonialism and Christianity have successfully downplayed and suppressed indigenous medicine in Igbo land. For example, the upsurge of prayer houses and Christian missions, you know, they suppress the outburst of traditional medicine. Most of the traditional practitioners seem to have a quote unquote bad business in their profession. There is also the issue of stigmatization. Most of the practitioners that I interviewed, they had that problem of stigmatization where there is a wrong classification of what their profession is. For example, the different categories of the dibia here would be the native doctors. You know, there is the herbalists, there is the bone setters, there are people that are witch hunters, there are people that do divination. So whenever there is a seeming taboo, somebody dies unexpectedly, there is an evil, they are being pointed at the first suspect. So they face that stigmatization because they practice indigenous traditional medicine. They also face the challenge of quackery in their profession because people tend to dilute the authenticity and efficacy of their profession by doing things that are close to traditional medicine while they are not doing the particular one. There's also an issue of the interest in traditional medicine across generations. Most of the people that I interviewed are people that were born within the colonial period. So they decried that there is a death of uninterest by the generations that are born after the colonial period. For example, the people that are born between 1980s and the Gen Zs, and even people born between 1965, they seem to have a little or no interest in traditional medicine. So it's a problem where if the practice is not able to extend to the next generation, that way indigenous knowledge faces a very serious challenge. And then there is also the problem of modernization and urbanization, where medicinal plants, especially for people that practice herbalism, medicinal plants and trees are almost going extinct. There's a death of them due to the upsurge of commercialized buildings, due to the upsurge of aesthetic trees, you know, and then mitigation and the efforts that the practitioners make towards sustaining indigenous knowledge. Firstly, some of the practitioners
please be rounding up. You have 2 minutes left.
Okay, thank you. Some of the practitioners have registered with a national body, which is the National Association of Nigerian Traditional Medicine Practitioners, and they have the chapters in each state. So the states that I visited, I started with their chapters and the chapter chairman, and they narrated a lot of things that their chapters are doing to sustain indigenous knowledge. Capacity building too. Most of them are enrolling in courses in the university that support the use of natural and naturopathic medicine, things like botany. For example, in the University of Nigeria, Nsukka, there is an Institute for Drug and Herbal Medicine, which some of the practitioners are enrolled in. There is also a collaboration for well-being in Igbo land. For example, Western medicine and indigenous medicine practitioners. The orthopedic surgeons are collaborating with the traditional bone setters. I saw that at Orodo. Orodo is a community in Umitoli local government where the community is known for traditional bone setting. So in that community, the practitioner there, they are practicing traditional bone setting, but their children are now studying orthopedic medicine and orthopedic surgery in the universities. And that way they complement the traditional medicine that their parents are practicing. So it's a collaboration of Western biomedicine and indigenous medicine. There is also the issue of apprenticeship. Most of the traditional medical practitioners have apprentices that they deliver the knowledge to via oral descriptions, practices, experiential knowledge, it's also a way of sustaining indigenous knowledge. There is also the issue of advocacy, where the practitioners talk to the government and also educate the people around them to preserve the culture, and also habitat conservation and reforestation, to sustain medicinal plants and to also sustain herbal plants that make for herbal concoctions. In conclusion, despite colonial disruptions, traditional medicine in southeastern Nigeria remains resilient. It adapts to modern influences while preserving cultural identity. Increased research, cultural shift in embracing indigenous traditional medicine practices, and collaboration would help to sustain the profession, preserve it, and promote indigenous knowledge. Thank you very much for listening.
Thank you so much, Chima, for your presentation. You'll be answering our questions later after all the presentation. So the last presenter is Dr. Felix Adiola. Ilant is there. Okay. Are you ready, sir?
Yes, yeah, ready. Okay.
All right. So you have 15 minutes for your presentation. Thank you.
Thank you. The title of our presentation is Colonial Modernity, Local Agency, and the Rise of Agrarian Town in Yoruba land. So the paper focuses on an important personality in Yoruba land who has been fairly committed in the historiography of state building, commerce, trade, and even agricultural development in terms of cash crop in Nigeria. Ipaye Balogun was an ex-slave, a slave who was captured in Ondo in the throes of the Yoruba Civil War, whisked to Ijesha and conscripted into a war, a soldier, all right, and later he found his way to Lagos. Right, he was a fugitive slave and also transformed himself into a merchant, a business merchant, following the abolition of the slave trade in Lagos. So, Ipaye Balogun shaped the history of legitimate trade, cash crop production, and ecological sustainability in colonial southwestern Nigeria. He was instrumental, all right, at the end of the 19th century in establishing Ajebamidele, an agrarian community, the present-day Odigbo local government area of Ondo State. It is now the town, between the boundary of Ondo State and Ogun State, all right, after J4, you're traveling. So that's Ajebamidele, very, very large agrarian town. It is situated by the Oni River. Oni River is, as seen on the map, is a major river that connects Ondo, Ijebu up to Ekpe, Lagos. It was a medium through which goods were transported to Lagos during the colonial period, especially timber and other goods from that region. So the world economic decline of the 1880s and also colonial modernity propelled many African merchants in Lagos, whose livelihoods were threatened by the slump in the global import and export trade, all right, to move en masse into the interior of Yoruba land to secure land for several agrarian purposes. Of course, this period also coincided with the British botanical experimentation with different cash crops, cocoa, rubber, cotton, palm oil, for export purposes. So many Lagos-based entrepreneurs capitalized on the development of the new trade during the advent of the British enterprise in Lagos, mobilizing human and labor resources for the development of cash crop agriculture in the hinterland. And the entrepreneurial impulse among the business elite in Lagos, and also the value placed on wealth, shaped the pattern of accumulation, especially in the terms of land acquisition in colonial Yoruba society. So they were the instrument through which cash capitalist policies and practices were injected into the Yoruba society by the beginning of the 20th century. So this is because of the fact that dominant characteristics of class in Lagos, was based on acquisition of land. If you have read the works of Christy Mann, Taiwo Olowo, and the accumulation of land in Lagos, and several scholars like J.B. Webster and Ayorinde have also documented how several Lagos residents, including Egba, Ondo, Ijebu-Ijesha, at the end of the abolition of the slave trade, experimented with new crops like cocoa, rubber, mobilizing their capital assets in Lagos to establish plantations in the interior. And most of these people became the people who shaped agricultural. But it is also important to know that it was not only colonial capitalism that shaped the mobilization of resources for agricultural development. The relative peace in Yoruba land in the 19th century also was a significant factor, all right, in shaping, mobilizing the urban, the Lagos elite to seek new form of livelihoods, relocating their capital to the interior. And one of the major figure in this context was Ipaye Balogun. Ipaye Balogun, as I've mentioned, who antecedent was quite dynamic. His former slave, all right, a warrior, then became a merchant. But by the end of the 19th century, he transformed into a major figure, shaping political identity, power, and capital formation. All right, mobilized resources in Lagos to the interior, where he acquired the land situated by the Oni River. By then it was not Ajibamile, it was a land under the custody of the Ondo people, Shimawe of Ondo, being an Ondo indigene. So his influence as a major merchant, interfacing between European merchants in Lagos, collecting goods and trading them in the interior, was instrumental in bargaining for the land, which became Ajibamile. So Ajibamile flourished in the colonial period due to its commercial significance. Its proximity to Lagos was a major channel for communication and transportation of goods from the interior to Lagos. So in this paper, what we try to do is to analyze how the mobilization of capital from the center of economic activities in Lagos into Yoruba land, reoriented rural agrarian livelihoods, and also boosted rural capital formation and the use of the available land in the Yoruba society. So the role of the Ipaye Balogun and the Lagos businessmen in the context of agrarian capitalism, cash crop export produce, is quite significant in understanding how the role of capital and human agency in the social changes that occurred in Yoruba land in the 20th century. By the 1880s, the Ipaye Balogun had used his influence, as I've mentioned, to facilitate the acquisition of that land. Good morning. So how did he acquire Ajibamile? Ipaye Balogun, Ipaye's acquisition of Ajibamile was a response to colonial modernity. Ipaye Balogun's acquisition of Ajibamile was a response to colonial modernity, underscored by the development of capitalism in Lagos. One of the key features of social and economic life in Lagos was the acquisition of property by the 19th century. Following the annexation of Lagos and the British introduction of legitimate trade, the critical feature of commerce and trade in Lagos, or social life in Lagos, was private property. So, given the antecedents in Lagos, Ipaye Balogun mobilized his resources in Lagos, to establish one of the key dominant agrarian towns in Ondo. So colonial capitalism paved the way for rapid social transformation through the imports and sales of imported goods, liquor, trade, umbrella, textile, with the chiefs and the elite in the interior. So the land was obtained from the Ondo chiefs in 1891 during the reign of Oba Ajilo Bioje. So it was the period when Ipaye Balogun used his transactional capital, his social capital, to bargain for the land. It also in lieu, all right, to protect the land, because there has always been contestation over the Ajibamidele land between the Jebu on the one hand and the Benin. So who also exercise significant influence over the land. Even as we speak today, Ijebu and Ondo, even the Kale, continues to wrestle over the Ajibamidele. So Ajibamidele, the development of Ajibamidele by Ipaye was a response on the one hand to colonial modernity, right? The rise of capitalist practices in Lagos on the one hand, but it was also a political, all right? He secured the land, all right, in the interest of the Ondo people in Lagos, and as it's been seen, this was a deed of settlement, which was used to grant the vast land to Ipaye by Oba Dino Bioja in 1890s, and by 1902, the deed had been endorsed by the colonial government themselves. So colonial rule allowed the Yoruba entrepreneurial elite to inject wealth from their accumulated assets, landed properties in Lagos into the expanding colonial economy in the interior. That is because some scholars, Gavin Williams and a few Saraberi, have contended that there was no agrarian capitalism in Yoruba land throughout the period of colonial land. Capitalist policies didn't undermine rural livelihoods, didn't affect environmental sustainability. But from the example of Ipaye Balogun and other elites in Lagos who pulled their resources into the interior, they stretch not only the environment, the issue of the fact that the development of cash crop actually had profound effects on environmental sustainability, but it also introduced capitalist policies which made obvious inequality, all right, and also enable development. So in the context of this study, colonial modernity entrenched capitalist practices in relation to land question and ecological sustainability. As we've seen through the development of cocoa, palm oil, rubber, land became keenly contested as opposed, or it became a major source of tension, not among farmers themselves, migrants, but among community which had either previously enjoyed mutual interactions in Ijebu, in Ikade. As I speak, the question of land, Ajibamidele land, is still a subject of litigation since the colonial period. So before then, that land was mutually used by the Jebu, the Kale, the Ondos, Bumbinis, the Urobo people. So it was until the injection of capital from Lagos that crisis erupted in this area. So the spread of cash crop cultivation also, in my conclusion, is seen as a process of capital formation which involved creation of a novel rural export sector, which involved risk, but also, it actually invoked a lot of conflicts in Yoruba society. Land accumulation by the elites, as we've seen, as we demonstrated through Ipaye Balogun, produce marked inequalities around the size of cocoa holdings, all right, and that is quite consistent with Michel Foucault's position that history is not a predictable mechanism, but the most problematic site of often random conflicts, viciously articulated in a capitalist world. So, as I've mentioned, colonial capitalism propelled rapid development, socioeconomic change, social transformation, improved income for the people, but it also brought immense conflicts, right, and also environmental degradation. Thank you very much.
Oh, thank you so much for keeping to time. We have enough time for discussion. If you have questions, please, you can direct them to the presenters. Do we have anyone online that has a question for any of the presenters? Okay, I can see someone is raising up. Someone is raising up his hand in the chat.
Yeah, you've been allowed to talk. Uzochi.
Okay, thank you very much. Good morning. My name is Uzochi. I'm listening from Owerri. My question goes to the lecture by Chima. And well, Chima happens to be my younger sister, and I really enjoyed her presentation. So while she was talking, she's mentioned one of the challenges of in practicing traditional medicine, low interest. And I was worried, like, what is actually the advantage of practicing traditional medicine? Maybe that could be the reason why some people don't have interest in it because they don't see any advantage in it, or it's not beneficial to them economically. So, what can actually make someone develop interest in practicing traditional medicine? That's my question. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay. Do we have any message in the chat box?
Not yet. Not yet.
So okay, Chima, you can come to that pending when probably someone else asks another question.
Okay.
You want to respond to that, or you? Because I have question for you as well.
So that's fine. Maybe we take all and then I respond one after the other, if that's okay.
Okay. Yeah. So I'm actually concerned about the the aspect of the theory that you used, and this is because I observed that in your presentation there is this let me say like a change from colonial method to indigenous method, and how probably scientific discovery, or let me say science itself, influence traditional medicine. So is there a way in which your theory kind of look beyond the indigenous method by looking at how science itself altered, the process of traditional medicine? Do you get my question?
Yes, please. I got it. Thank you
Okay.
for asking.
So yeah. So I also have a question for the first presenter. That's Bolanle. Bolanle, can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
All right. So in your presentation, you used mainstream medicals. You said you use mainstream like interchangeably with maybe scientific medical practices as well. And I think this question I asked Chima kind of intersect partially to your research as well. I'm interested in knowing the the way in which science, or let me say scientific method of medicine, altered or downplayed traditional medicine in your research as well. So, and again, you talked about the theory of social epistemology, which is very, very crucial. And I think I really like the way you use it. But in using this kind of theory, um, do you consider like the the um, the impact on, let me say, the methodology, the methodology of this theory? Do you consider it in your research, or do you think it's just the best form of theory for you to use in addressing your paper? So that's the question I have for you. And so you mentioned something again on Igbo. Yeah. So and this takes us to the type of forest that we have in Yoruba land. We have two types of forests. We have the community forest and we have the plantation forest. And most times when we talk about forestry, we usually downplay this type of forest. We don't even put it into consideration. And that is one of the major problems that we have during colonialism, during the colonial era, because the colonial officials could not differentiate between our plantation forest and our community forest. So I actually want to, maybe there is a way in which you want to clarify your Igbo, because Igbo is also a plantation forest. It can be plantation forest, can be community forest, Like I want you to be specific in the type of forest that you are talking about in your research. And the reason why I'm saying this is because, there are verses of Ifa, according to Muhammad. There is an author I read about, there is one author from the Nigerian Conservative Foundation, Nigeria Conservation Foundation, yes, in Lagos, that wrote an article on this type of forest. So I actually want you to use your language description to, identify the type of forest that you're talking about. So, and to the other Chima that presented on animal totems. Yeah, I really enjoyed your presentation, and I must be sincere with you that there is this form of negligence that we have towards animal totems. Even in Yoruba land as well, we have it. Like, there is when you call someone Mekun, like a son of a lion, it shows bravery, it's kind of, gives different, or let me say, gan or, but when you call someone Eronko, which means animal, it's a very, disturbing form of language that is very annoying and, insultive and all. So, it's very essential, and I really like the way you use it. But my question now to you is, what is the implication of the cultural significance of this totem to the Igbo traditional title? What is the cultural significance of these animal totems to the Igbo traditional titles? And this is because, it has been diplomatic these days. It's looking at the title from what it used to be to what it is now, you see that there is this great divergence in this way in which those titles are being used. Yeah, so to Dr. Felix, yeah, my question to you is on the change in the class of custodians, And this is because you talked about the agrarian capitalists in Yoruba society using the likes of Ipaye as an example, which I truly understand. But there is a concept of colonial policy that had room for this kind of people like Ipaye to emerge in colonial Nigeria. Do you consider the policies that changes over time? Have you looked into the policies of the colonial policies that changes over time that gave room for agrarian capitalists to emerge? And is there a particular theory that you are using to, identify the role of people like Ipaye in colonial Nigerian history as regards conservation? Yeah, so in responding to these questions, and again, we have someone online, Samuel. He's also a co-presenter. Samuel Akimbo. I'm sorry I didn't introduce you the other time while I was introducing others. So Samuel Akimbo is also a co-presenter to Nkechi Mambo Dichimma. So yeah, Samuel, you can actually speak now. I think you've been permitted to talk.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah. So my question is it's not more of a question than a suggestion to the presenter. I was talking about the emergence of the new the business person. I've forgotten Ajay Bamide. Yeah, anyways, what I'm trying to refer the person to is a book. There was a monograph published by J. Ajayi in maybe 1960s or 70s or 80s, I can't remember. But it talks about the emergence of a new elite talking about the converted Christians, they emerge as new elites. So the policy, the that Dr. Amsa is talking about is actually, you can find some kind of like insights from that book. It's basically the emergence of the new elites or the new political group by Jeff Adjai. I think it's on archive.org. It's not open access, but if you go on archive.org, you should be able to find that article there. Okay. So another thing we want to say is that our presentation, when we're presenting, we forgot to tell you that we have we're sharing the QR code for our slides so that anyone who has interest can actually copy and like have access to the slides. That's what I wanted to say. But I have a question for for persons that say, "Boy, well, sincerely, I don't think there is anything like Igba might be a Nollywood concept. I think maybe what we have is like, we call it what's it called? Igboru is Oro.
Yeah.
Igboru. There was a book published recently, not a book, an article published during the pandemic by Professor Ogundiro Akinwumi, titled Managing Epidemics in Ancestral Yoruba Towns and Cities, Sacred Groves as Isolating Sites. So I'm going to copy and put the link of I'm going to put the title of the article because it's a very long one in the chat, sorry, how do I post this now?
Yeah, you can drop it in the
everyone.
chat. You can
Allowed
drop
to
it
post
in
to
the chat.
everyone?
Yeah, please.
So you can drop it in the chats.
Okay, so I'm looking for it right now.
All right. So while we are waiting for him to do that, you can start responding to the questions. You have 3 minutes to do that, please. Thank you.
So who should go first?
I think Team Man should go first.
I assume it's my own team man. Yeah. So
yes, you have many questions, so
that's right. Thank you. So the two questions: why is there a seeming disinterest in traditional medicine and culture and all that? And then the question of the theory. Well, I think it can be based on a generational disconnect. Taking it to colonialism and the cultural erosion of cultural practices. The benefits of practicing traditional medicine is akin to the benefits of sustaining culture and cultural tradition. For example, you have benefits like belonging. You have benefits of self-understanding, preserving culture. And then traditional medicine is also complementary to Western biomedicine. So, and then you also preserve nature by using the herbs and the herbal extracts. You are also conserving nature thereby. And then on the question of using the indigenous knowledge system theory, I mentioned earlier that the indigenous knowledge system theory is dynamic and adaptive, right? It's while preserving the cultural substance, it is also adaptive. When I said that some of the traditional medical practitioners are also enrolled in institutions that promote the practice of herbal and the use of herbal plants. Also, so that is a complementary and adaptive style that the practitioners are using, which the theory promotes, and that's the reason I use it in the study. It's also a bit to sustain indigenous pedagogy, if you would, while complementing Western biomedicine. I hope I answered.
Yeah, all right. Actually, it's a work in progress, So, second team, you can go.
Okay. Now, my question, I want to allow my co-author to to answer that question, and then I'll respond after.
Okay.
Someone.
Yeah, Akingbo, I think you still has
I thought you were going. Oh, the significance of you
I
asking
would
about the
support. Yeah.
significance of those titles, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Cultural significance.
Cultural significance. Sorry, I'm not able to show my face because it's like 5 a.m. where I am. So yeah. So okay, cultural significance. In a way, those titles, like in the present, like another thing that we also to actually ask this question, I'm going to stack a little bit. If you understand that Igbo pre-colonial time was an acephalous society in the sense that there was no centralized authorship as we have in other parts. It's a collective democracy. Consider it like what you have in Greece in a way, but like different, like for frame of reference, it's not exactly the same thing. So the chieftaincy titles then is not what we have now. Now it's more like an kind of like imposition that was introduced by the British people that was given to the warrant chiefs. Some of those people that were created, some of those rules that were created. But at the present time in our society now, those titles are just a show of wealth, if we think about it, or influence in the society. I think it doesn't really connect with the traditional system of the totemic spirits or the conservational aspect or ecological aspect of the tradition itself, right? So, I mean, that's my own perspective. I think, and that's my own part, and that's what literature has shown in terms of what um, people have written in terms of the Igbo tradition entirely. So it doesn't have that. I mean, for example, one of our presentation was a case whereby individuals who are given titles of lion of the community and all those totemic titles are some of the people actually promoting the burning of shrines and what's it called, and sacred um, um, totems or trees that protect lands, making those lands vulnerable, right? Which is a continuation of the colonial thing, that because we know in terms of archival records from colonial times, the British or the missionaries were burning shrines and burning religious artifacts. So in a sense, people who are doing the burning now are being given chieftaincy title for their bravery in the society. So in a way, it doesn't really connect. There's a psychological disconnection between the titles themselves, if they were traditional or reintroduced, and the totemic spirit itself. So I don't know. I'll just yield here.
Okay, but let me basically this Igbo founder-based chieftaincy titles actually embody cultural values. Yeah, in the historical context, they were responsible for contributing significantly to cultural and linguistic continuity. So sometimes you have these artifacts, they carry rich story. If you have Agune chamber, lion, the leopard that guards the clan, this is kind of like an animal symbolic courage. It's used as a symbolic attribute that shows maybe vigilance, or used to describe someone that's a protector of the community. This was historically. And even in contemporary times, some people still bear these titles based on that. We have Ogbuefi, killer of that signifies someone that is resourceful, is generous, he has a high status, or maybe a philanthropist in the environment. But these are actually kind of like linguistic shortcut, but they also embody complex cultural concepts. But we're also saying that the reason why our work is important is that we are seeing that there is a current trend now that of disconnecting with some of these things. So a lot of people do not bear these titles with the mindset that these were cultural values that were revered and were used to protect this species, but they bear them for various other reasons. And then gradually their actions towards even the species that they are supposed to have preserved actually is opposite of what they say they are bearing. So it holds a lot of cultural significance. That's what I'm trying to say. But the attitude of the younger generation actually shows a disconnect with what it actually has to offer.
All right, thank you. Dr. Felix,
Okay.
you can go, and then Bolanle.
Okay, thank you very much. Yeah, your second question, it actually answers the first one. You're asking the change of status in terms of the role of the custodian of land, the first question. And the second one is how the colonial administration encourage or discourage capitalist practices. Yeah, by the end of 19th century, African chiefs had signed treaties with the British, all right, officials, which actually symbolized the transfer of indigenous or communal lands to the British. So the British wielded enormous influence over land. So the land tenure system changed from what it used to be in the pre-colonial period. The chiefs were, though still the paramount ruler in their domain, but the power to appropriate land was in the hands of the British government, the district head, the provincial officers, and all of this stuff. So the chiefs had little. But for Ipaye, he had obtained the deeds by 1890s, even before the official commencement of colonial rule. But when the colonial rule was consolidated, the colonial government themselves acknowledged the deed I showed you was signed by the British government themselves. And that's so. But whether the colonial government encourage or discourage capitalist practices is so obvious. The fact that the land tenure system changed dramatically. All right, before the colonial period, land was not. It was strange for anybody to sell land. Land among the Yoruba people was not common. It doesn't have capital value. It was held in trust by the head of the community, the lineage, on behalf of the people. They allocate those lands to people according to their needs. But under colonial rule, this system changed. And if you have read one of my articles that was published in Southern Journal of Contemporary History, titled Ishakole and the Transformation of Agricultural Land Conflicts, 2021. Land was the major source of Ondo and Idori were good neighbors. They married each other, married from the same royal line. But as soon as land became commercialized, most of them started drawing boundaries and became a source of tension. People started giving money, inducing colonial officials to acquire more land, more acres to add to their plantation. And
Excuse me. I'm really sorry to interrupt you, but this panel has 3 minutes so that the next one can start on time. I'm exceedingly sorry, but please, can we keep that in mind?
Okay, so the only way in which you can say that the colonial government didn't encourage plantation system is in the context of discouraging plantation farming for cocoa, but in other areas for rubber, they allow plantation in Aram, in Ondo and on the other side. Thank you.
All right, thank you so much. The last presenter, please, can give a comment and then we round up.
Yeah, so thank you so much for your observation. When I mentioned Igbo, I'm focusing more on the community forest, community dedicated forest. And to the second person who questioned the use of Igbo. Now, Igbo. Okay, is it Igbo or Igbo? Okay, so Igbo is actually not only a Nollywood movie, although the usage of that word is popularized by the Nollywood movie that you are making reference to. And Igbo is just one type of sacred forest among several that we have in Yoruba. We have Igbo Yeku, one in Ondo State where masquerade are not allowed. We have Igbo Olori in Ota, where the king, and there are several sacred forests. So Igbo is like a unifying, like an umbrella term to say these are sacred or forbidden forests. And that's why I've chosen to use that word. Thank you.
All right. Yeah, thank you so much. So we'll continue our panel in 15 minutes time. So let's endeavor to attend as well. Thank you so much, everyone. It's nice to see your faces. See you again. Bye.
Bye.